Treasurer, welcome to 7:30.
Nice to be with you, Joe.
Now, you've been reluctant today to make definitive statements about the recommendations because we're still waiting for the Royal Commission. But what's your view in principle on this recommendation that default super accounts be created only for new members and then they be presented with a list of the top 10 products?
Well, I think there is a range of innovative and important recommendations out of this landmark Productivity Commission inquiry. It was an inquiry that was requested by the Coalition just over 3 years ago, and it's into our $2.7 trillion superannuation sector, which is so vital to our retirement incomes of millions of Australians. When it comes to the key findings of this report, they do point out that there are significant structural flaws in the existing system, and particularly in the default system. And their big idea is that in future, superannuation should revolve around the member, not the workplace. And I think that is certainly worthy of serious consideration.
What about revoking the licences of funds that consistently underperform? Is that fair enough in terms of protecting workers?
Well, certainly that is an interesting idea as well. That could lead to better outcomes for superannuation members, because what we have seen is 93 APRA-approved funds being smaller than $1 billion of assets under management, and as a result, they don't actually get the returns necessarily that some of the bigger funds are getting, and they're not producing the outcomes that members expect. What the report points out was that of the 17 worst performing funds, 10 of those were retail funds, 6 of them were industry funds, and there was 1 corporate fund. So I think this report is not about the industry fund sector or the retail fund sector or the unions. It's about how the whole superannuation sector can do better in protecting the superannuation funds of members.
We often hear over 55s saying that they'd contribute more to superannuation if there wasn't so much uncertainty about tax. Is it fair enough to assume that there are going to be tax increases when it comes to superannuation in coming years?
Well, there's only one side of politics that is taking to the next election additional taxes on super, and that's the Labor Party. They have $19 billion of additional taxes in super, and they're actually going to make it more difficult for working mums to have catch-up contributions. They're going to make it more difficult for people to put money into their super that is non-concessional contributions. They've got a whole series of tax increases on super, which could come at a pretty bad time for people, because people want to ensure that they have sufficient funds for their retirement and that they're not a burden on the government purse.
Now, Treasurer, we're into a new year, an election year. Have you locked in an election for May?
We haven't formalised the date. That's a decision for the Prime Minister and his alone. But what he has been very clear about is that I'll be delivering a budget on April the 2nd. That will be an important economic document. The budget's coming into surplus in 2019-20, the first time in more than a decade.
So it's guaranteed now there won't be an election before April?
Well, I've just made it very clear that I'm looking forward to delivering the budget on April the 2nd, and the public will...
It didn't sound like a guarantee, though.
Well, I can tell you that I'm preparing for that budget, and there will be a very clear contest when it comes to the economy at the next election. It will be between a coalition who have cut taxes, reduced the rate of spending growth, created over 1.2 million new jobs, have a AAA credit rating from the leading credit rating agencies, and bringing a budget back into surplus.
So that April budget will be key. There are headwinds hitting the global economy right now. Is that forecast surplus in 1920 of $4.1 billion still looking solid?
It's certainly still looking solid, and we are committed to delivering a surplus not just in 2019-2020 but over the years ahead to bring down net debt from just over 18% of GDP today to 1.5% at the end of the medium term. This is what coalition governments do. They cut taxes, they create jobs, and they pay back Labor's debt. There is, as you say, some cold headwinds in the international economy, particularly around the trade tensions that we've seen between China and the US, also rising global debt levels and the impact of the normalisation of US monetary policy and the increased rates there, and the impact that's had on capital outflows from emerging economies. These are some of the issues that we need to deal with, and also, of course, here at home we've seen some constrained credit lending that the government and the Reserve Bank and others are very focused on. So we're putting forward new innovative reforms and ideas like a $2 billion securitisation fund for small business and a small business growth fund. These are designed to ensure that the engine room of our economy, the more than 3 million small businesses in Australia, actually continue to grow, get good access to finance. When it comes to the property market, we have seen significant falls there, Joe, and that is a result of a number of factors. But one thing is for certain, the independent economists and property analysts don't want to see Labor's plans for a new housing tax, because that would come at exactly the wrong time for the Australian property market, and it will see that anyone who owns their own home worth less under Labor and anyone who rents their own home end up paying more under Labor.
Josh Frydenberg, thanks for talking to us on 7:30.
Good to be with you.